So the show The Pitt has finally arrived. It's a new medical drama that stars Noah Wyle, and it takes place in Pittsburgh. Now, Noah Wyle is the same actor from ER, the 90s medical drama. And so in this, he plays, again, an emergency room physician. But the story is a little bit different. Now, originally, the talk is they wanted to make a continuation of ER. And if you've ever watched that show, and I highly recommend that you do, you'll see in the show that it ends open-ended where Dr. Carter, Noah Wyle, could be brought back. So anyways, they tried to do so. They reached out to the estate of Michael Crichton, the creator of ER, and tried to see if they could make a continuation. That was shot down. And actually, they got sued for the current show that they were trying to create, which is a different ER show. And it's totally different, actually.
I feel like there could be a reboot of ER.
He's just been named in a lawsuit claiming that his new medical drama, The Pitt, is an uncredited ER reboot.
The only similarities I see so far is it stars Noah Wyle, but everything else is different. The scenarios are different, it's less drama, and it has like a realistic feel to it. And it's also shot in a 24 style, so an hour on the show is an hour in real life. So completely different scenarios, different city. But that's basically what the show is. Now, the one thing I like to tell people is, in general, so they understand what the primary goal of the ER is, and that is to stabilize. The reason I say this to people is sometimes I have patients that go to the ER and they're like, they didn't look up this, they didn't give me a diagnosis, I don't know what they were thinking. And I said, that's not their primary goal. Yes, if they can give you a diagnosis, they will, but their primary goal is to stabilize you, make sure that you're okay, or to admit you, or to fix what they can and send you home. That's what the primary goal is. Now, in a medical drama, they might give you more scenarios where they do figure out exactly what's going on. So we'll see what happens in the show, and they kind of do go more into looking up what is the diagnosis of what's possibly happening. Now, again, like I said, the show stars Noah Wyle, and his character is Dr. Robbie, or Dr. Rabinsky. Now, he hasn't been in this hospital for about 4 years. Something happened that had him leave, and now he's coming back. And later you'll find out what that scenario is, but that's the general story of what's going on with him. Now, what I like about the show, as soon as it comes on, there's two things. Number one is it shows a busy ER. Perfect. Anyone who's ever been in ER, worked in ER, knows that they usually are busy. I would be scared if I ever walked into an ER and it was quiet, because you're gonna have a horrible night because it's gonna be pandemonium. So good, first scene you see busy ER. The second thing you hear, the first dialogue you really hear in the show, is they talk about hospital closures and hospital funding. And I think this is a reminder to just medicine in America is a business. And that is extremely important. And I think with all the things we're dealing with, a lot of things like health insurance being really front and center in the news, I think it's important to keep reminding people that medicine in America is a business. Now, there's general introductions. You see different doctors working there. One of the doctors is Dr. Collins, really important. Dr. Collins is a Black female doctor, and she is pregnant. I guarantee you that is going to be a storyline. I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, in the story, they do talk about a girl who's coming back to the ER to get an abortion pill. So maybe there'll be some drama between Dr. Collins and that patient that comes back. I'm not too sure, but that is going to be a future storyline, I promise you. Anyways, also you see Dr. Robbie trying to get sign out from the doctor from the night before. So in the hospital, what happens in the ER, you have the doctor who's finishing their shift, and they give you all the information to the new doctor coming on. So what patients are there, what patients might be admitted, what patients are ready to be discharged, but you basically tell them what's going on so the next staff can have a smooth transition. Early on, again, the hospital administrator comes back. And again, extremely realistic. And she's talking to Dr. Robbie and trying to get him to work harder, get better patient satisfaction. Again, reminding him that, again, medicine is a business. And one thing I try to tell friends of mine is what makes a good doctor to a patient is not necessarily what makes a good doctor to a hospital. A good doctor to a patient is somebody who listens, somebody who has a great bedside manner. But what makes a good doctor to a hospital is, are they saving costs, right? Are they getting good satisfaction scores? Again, Again, totally different. So that's just one thing you do have to understand going forward. Now, the overall cases in this are extremely realistic. I was actually really surprised. I was watching it, taking notes like, all right, I'm gonna scrutinize this. This is gonna be some bullshit. No, the medical scenarios were extremely realistic. For example, when the young athlete comes in who presents with cardiac symptoms, they go through a list of differentials. All are great differentials that a doctor coming in would have to think about a young athlete having cardiac arrest. So that was perfect. And I've definitely had to take care of patients, young athletes who have cardiac symptoms, and they were spot on. The diagnosis that they had, the high potassium, needing dialysis to clean out the potassium. I mean, extremely realistic, and it was great. Other scenarios that you see, actually, one thing that was fake or not realistic, and there's only one thing I could point out so far, was when the young athlete has to be defibrillated, and they get the paddles and they charge him up and they shock him. That probably hasn't happened in 20 years. I can't think of a hospital scenario where somebody has physical paddles and shocks somebody, clear and shocks them. That doesn't happen. Now you strap the paddles onto people, you press the button, and you defibrillate them. So that's just one thing, but people don't really know that. But if you're in a hospital, you're not gonna see that unless this hospital is using equipment from the 1960s. It's not gonna happen. Aside from that, everything else, great. Now, the patient with weird family dynamics, the mother and father, and the kid's kind of like a high school shooter. Again, that is realistic, not the high school shooter part, but the fact that you have weird family dynamics, you're trying to figure out what's going on. Sometimes you have a patient, maybe they're from a culture where women don't really talk and the men does all the talking, or you have a patient who's not really there for themselves and they're there for their cousin, and really the cousin is the patient. And the one thing I would like to say is sometimes when you see a patient, you're not just treating the patient, you're treating the family. And what I mean by treating the family is, you're dealing with different family dynamics. You're not just treating that. You have to understand how somebody might react to the diagnosis. You're giving them, who do you give information to? Who do you not give information to? So again, realistic. You also see one of the medical students, Javardi, and I think it was great with her. She actually has a mother who is a surgeon, and that's realistic. I actually, when I was in residency, I worked in the same hospital where my mother was one of the administrators. So again, just a weird dynamic that is realistic. Other things they have at the end, they have a little bit about COVID. And essentially, it's about the PTSD that some of the doctors had to do with dealing with COVID. And that was very, very, very true. A lot of the doctors I worked with when I was in residency did have PTSD from there. And I mean, I had very bad scenarios. I remember I had friends who were saying, COVID's not real. It's not a real thing. And at the same time, I'm in the ICU and I probably saw 100, 200 people die. So it could cause a lot of PTSD. So that's a very, very realistic thing that was in this show. The last thing I'd have to say, again, the show is very realistic. I mean, the scenarios are coming and going so fast, but I think the reason why they come and go so fast is because you're following different residents and different people. No one physician is going to see all those patients at the same time, but it is a great show and it is realistic. The only thing to me, it's almost too realistic. I don't know if I want to necessarily work all day and then come home and watch work. But again, I think it's well scripted. They definitely have some doctors on staff. And to me, it's well done. And because Noah Wile's in there and I loved him in ER, I'm going to keep watching. So again, until next time, stay safe and maybe I'll review the next episode. Thanks again.